All right. Hey, everybody. Chuck Holton here. Thank you for being with us today. I'm coming to you from, looks like I might be muted. No, you can't. I've got to make sure you can hear me. I'm coming to you from my studio in Panama today, and I'd like to know where you're coming in from. So do me a favor and post in the chat where you're watching today's live from. Now, we're doing our best to bring you lots of great content. And so I also want to ask just a favor, if you would remember to hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That way you won't miss any of these lives, and you can get updated or alerted right before we go live, so you can not miss the live broadcast. Also, if you don't have time to watch the entire live, which usually runs about an hour, you can watch the condensed version of the live, which will come out like end of day today or early tomorrow morning. We are doing that every day, and they're very popular. A lot of people who don't have an hour to spare can get kind of the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about every day in the condensed live. So just wanted to put that out there and let you know. Now, today we're going to be talking about two different subjects. Number one, there's a real serious escalation in violence in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil between the local gangs, and these are actually transnational criminal organizations, which we'll talk about more, and the government of Brazil, the police and the special forces. There's an organization called BOPE, which is sort of an anti-gang unit that I've been out with before. And I've been to Rio, I've been out in those favelas, and I've been out with those special operations forces. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about that and show you some stuff that we shot on the ground there. Before I do that, right now is the time you need to be signing up for Medicare. This is the open window. And when my mom first tried to apply for Medicare, it was a total nightmare. There were piles of paperwork, phone calls that went no place, and about a dozen different people all giving her different answers. And I remember thinking, like, how does anybody over 65 figure this stuff out without losing their minds? And now that premiums are going up and plans are changing again this year, it's even worse. So that's why I've partnered with a company called Chapter. They're the only Medicare advisors who actually review every plan in the country, 24,000 of them, and find which one is best for you. They don't get a commission, so there's no sales pitch, no nonsense. And they'll go through your options in under 20 minutes, totally free. And actually, we have a Chapter thing there. If you're already on the right plan, they'll tell you. But if you're not, they can save you like an average of about $1,100 a year. So don't wait until the deadline comes. Call 636-812-6714 right now and talk with my trusted partner, Chapter, or visit my special link, askchapter.org/hotzone. They helped me and my mom, and now they can help you too. So thank you to Chapter for sponsoring today's video, and we'll move on now. Okay, so there is a real massive amount of fighting that's going on in Brazil. One of Brazil's oldest and most powerful criminal organizations is called Commando Vermelho. It's Red Command in English. And it started back in the late 70s in the prisons in Brazil. And it started out as a highly Marxist communist organization that was trying to push the whole continent of South America toward Marxism. They've become one of the most powerful criminal factions on planet Earth now. They historically sort of are based in, and they kind of own Rio de Janeiro's favelas. And every once in a while, the government of Brazil tries to take a hard stance against these gangs, and they send in the troops. And when they send in the troops, they send in tanks and armored personnel carriers and all sorts of things into these neighborhoods to try to root out the favelas, and I mean, sorry, root out the gangs from the favelas. It typically doesn't go very well for anybody. A lot of cops get killed, a lot of people get killed. Unfortunately, a lot of bystanders, especially children, end up getting killed because the favelas are some of the most densely populated places on planet Earth. Now, I'm going to show you here just a little bit of the fighting that's been going on. You can hear the gunfire. The gunfire that's going on. And so I'm going to leave that up there and turn the audio off and let you continue watching as we go through this. Listen to the audio on this. So that's a war zone, if ever I've heard one. I'm going to turn that down a little bit so I can keep talking over it. And like I said, this is something that happens from time to time as the government tries to take over these favelas and tries to kick out the gangs. The gangs are heavily involved in cocaine, weed. They do retail and wholesale. They do a lot of arms trafficking. They extort pretty much everybody. And they even hijack, do hijackings of cars. They do armored car robberies, and they do what's called parallel governance in these favelas. That is, they are the most powerful force in the favelas, and so they are, actually governing to some extent in there. Now you can see here the cops as they are, performing this. These are slums. Now, this area is not the real difficult part of the favelas. The real challenging part of the favelas is where they are they're so tight that cars can't even get in there. It's walking only. And I'm going to show you a video that I shot in a favela when I went into a favela a couple years ago. In just a second, as soon as I just want you to see the rest of this, because this is pretty intense stuff. A lot of fighting going on, and these guys, again, there's so much crossfire that a lot of civilians end up getting hurt. We know that Brazil is one of the most crime-ridden countries on planet Earth, and so
we're driving into the favela called Alemão. It's one of the largest ones in Rio. About 300,000 people live here, and it's actually a very dangerous place. In order to get in here, you see we're driving with the windows down. That's because we have to be visible to the drug dealers so that they know who we are. And since they don't know us, we had to bring somebody with us who lives here that can kind of vouch for us. We didn't have to go directly to the drug gangs and ask for their permission per se, but without a sponsor to get into this neighborhood, we might be able to get in, but we wouldn't get back out again. So how do you stay safe?
Como é que vocês se mantêm seguros?
When those things happen?
They run to the first alley they see. They try to protect themselves.
Do you know anyone who has been shot?
Vocês têm alguém na família ou amigo que já levou um tiro aqui dentro?
Uma avó do meu amigo morreu acho que mês passado lá na Brasília.
Avô? Yeah, his friend's grandmother died a month ago in a shooting.
And you teach martial arts?
Yes.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu?
True, but I learn taekwondo.
Taekwondo.
Não, zero. Eu acho que
We don't have the choice to protect ourselves, especially living in this place, so we are totally dependent on the government.
eu acho que
Look at statistics, you can see all of those countries where people have the right to carry a gun to protect themselves. Those places are actually very peaceful.
que as pessoas que não têm esse
But here, we don't have the right to protect ourselves. I don't think a thief, a drug dealer, will turn his guns in. The day we all are able to protect ourselves, we're going to be better here.
So I just want you to look at that image right there, because this is what those favelas actually look like. And you can see just how incredibly dense they are. So the type of gunfire that you see or that you hear in those videos I showed you, just imagine all of the civilians that are in harm's way. Fortunately, most of those buildings are made out of block or concrete. And so there is a little bit of stopping power, a little bit of cover going in there. So yeah, I mean, it's insane. So bottom line is this Commando Vermelho, the Red Command, is a highly influential criminal organization, and they do actually send a lot of drugs out of their countries. It makes them a transnational criminal organization. And most of the cocaine that they send out ends up making its way to Europe, but there is some that is funneled into the United States. What they do is they funnel it from Brazil up through Venezuela and then into the United States, or from Brazil into Bolivia, and then up through Ecuador into Colombia and up to the United States via the land route that way. So you know, they are a threat, not just to people in you know, other places, people in Brazil, but they're a threat to you know, the United States as well. So this is something that we are seeing kind of play out across Latin America, and it's kind of interesting that it's happening now, because as President Trump has decided to take a really hard stance against the cartels. He started out with the cartels that were moving people up into the United States at the beginning of his term, and now he's really moved on as they have completely stopped the illegal migration into the U.S. He has moved on to the narco trafficking and is trying to stop the drugs coming into the United States. As a matter of fact, yesterday they struck 4 ships. This is the most they've done in one day. I say ships. These are these go fast boats. I've got the video here of that. These were out in international waters. Pete Hegseth put this out, and it's another one of these strikes that you see. They say there were probably 8 people on these boats that were killed and you know, taken out by U.S. naval assets. And you can see there the bales of cocaine on the front of that boat. So they are continuing to spread cheer throughout the Caribbean to the drug runners. And not only that, but it has sort of motivated other Latin American countries to start taking a harder stand against the gangs themselves. So down in Ecuador, back in January, the new president down there, Daniel Noboa, declared an internal armed conflict and designated 22 gangs as terrorist groups. Ecuador doubled down throughout 2025, and the U.S. then went on to add 2 of those gangs to its own terror lists. So they have been rounding up gang members and put them in prison, kind of taking the El Salvador route as they see how effective it was in El Salvador, and again, emboldened by President Trump. In Guatemala, on October 21st of this month, the Congress down there passed an anti-gang law that formally declared MS-13 and Barrio 18 as terrorist organizations, and then stiffened the penalties for belonging to those organizations. Honduras passed a law that partially legally frames narco trafficking as terrorism, and they've reformed their penal code since 2023 to treat the pandillas, that's how you say gang in Spanish, or the maras, as terrorist groups. And then in June of last year, the government announced further measures to classify gang activity and some narco crime as terrorism as well. So they're implementing these you know, sort of stronger measures through their penal code and not through a separate terrorist list. One other country that is just you know, we should comment on is Nicaragua. Nicaragua being a communist country, I mean, many people don't know, but Nicaragua is a very communist country. And the guy that rules Nicaragua has been around for a long, long time, made his wife the vice president, you know, just extremely corrupt. But they have been really cracking down, not on cartels. They've not adopted anything relating to cartels, calling them terrorist organizations or anything like that. Who the ones they've cracked down on are religious organizations. Churches and religious NGOs have been harassed. They've had their leaders arrested, and they've been driven out of the country. So, you know, kudos, good on Nicaragua there for going after exactly the wrong people. And they didn't even learn the lesson that Cuba learned, which was, you know, Cuba used to really persecute its Christians, but now they realize that whenever there's a disaster, before the government can get its act together, which usually takes weeks to get in there and actually help the people, the Christians are already on the ground helping people. And so the Cuban government has actually dramatically loosened its persecution of, or lessened its persecution of Christians and Christian organizations. So anyway, it's good to see how President Trump taking such a strong stand against these cartels has sort of emboldened leaders all across the Western Hemisphere to do the same. And that's something we should, you know, call out and praise President Trump for sure. Now, as you know, President Trump has continued to build up forces in the Caribbean. So I just want to give you kind of an update on that. But before we get to that, folks, let me just ask you to do me a favor and go over to chuckholton.com and become a supporter over there. That's really a great way that we can sort of smooth out the ups and downs of the ad revenue that comes from YouTube. They have a habit of just randomly demonetizing some of our videos. And so all of a sudden I'm working for free, or at least working for YouTube, because from what I can tell, they don't actually stop running ads on my videos. They just stop paying me on the ads that they run, and they keep all the money. So one of the ways that we've tried to future-proof our channel is to go over to Locals. You can get there by going to chuckholton.com at that pinned link right there. And you can get early access to a lot of our videos. You can actually, you know, chat with other fans of the channel. We're going to have things like this t-shirt going up for sale here pretty soon. And we have a whole bunch of them that are going up. I've got a new book coming out, some of my documentaries that'll be coming out. Nathan is putting together a documentary right now from my last trip to Rio de Janeiro, when I got to go into the favelas, where you can see a lot more of what that looked like. So the people who are supporters over at Locals will get first crack at those kinds of things. Now, let me also just remind you, if you happened to have bought my last book through Locals or become a supporter over there about a year ago, your 1-year anniversary is coming up and your credit card's about to get charged again. So if you see a $70 charge on your credit card, that's for another year of support for our channel. If you don't want that to happen, you need to go into Locals and you need to cancel your support before that gets charged, because it's not going to be helpful if you go charge back that $70 charge after the fact. All that does is charges both of us more money. So would highly recommend, if you don't want to support us anymore, that you go cancel your support before it gets updated. We just had a lot of people charging back lately because they don't remember what the $70 charge is for. So, okay, now on to Venezuela. A lot of people are saying that, look, this buildup in the Caribbean is a whole lot more than would be necessary to actually take on the drug cartels, to bomb these go fast boats out on Hey, Cash, good to see you. Thank you for being here. We don't need that many troops. We don't need 10,000 troops in the Caribbean to go after the drug cartels. That's just so. A lot of people are saying, look, what this signals is that we are all about regime change in Venezuela. As a matter of fact, the AP put out a video where they are reporting, they're breaking this story that actually the United States has been trying to figure out a way to get Maduro out of there for more than a year. And I want to show you just a little bit of that. And I got to be careful. I can't go full screen with it because I'll get demonetized, and I might get demonetized anyway, but this is really interesting. So I want to show you at least a part of this. Check this out.
Recruit Nicolas Maduro's pilot to join a plot to bring the Venezuelan strongman to justice began in the Dominican Republic last year. A federal agent caught wind that Maduro's planes were being serviced in the Caribbean, and he sought permission from the Dominican authorities to approach the pilots for Maduro who were there to oversee the work.
So they actually got in touch with Maduro's pilots of his private jet, and they went and met with them somewhere, and they were like, look, there's a multi-million-dollar bounty on Maduro's head. You could be absolutely filthy rich. We'll take care of you. We'll take care of your family. And, we will, make sure that you're safe. And all you have to do is next time Maduro jumps on the plane to fly someplace, you just sort of accidentally stray into some nearby country like Trinidad, which is very close, some nearby Caribbean country. And when you land, we'll have the FBI there or the DEA or somebody to pick him up and arrest him. Now, the DEA has done this to various drug lords throughout the world. As a matter of fact, I did a bunch of embeds with the DEA back in the day when they had something called their DEA FAST team. And I forget what FAST was an acronym for, but it was a special operations team that was formed by the DEA. And what they did was they went around the world based out of Quantico, Virginia, and arrested drug kingpins. And when they couldn't arrest them in their own country, so for example, there was a guy in Thailand that they were trying to get a hold of, and they couldn't go into Thailand and arrest him. So what they did was they sent a spy or somebody in there to set up a meeting with this guy, supposedly about a massive drug deal that would make him a lot of money, and say, oh, we want to meet on our yacht that's just offshore from Thailand. So the guy came out to the yacht and he was having his meeting. Well, as he was having his meeting, the yacht was slowly drifting into international waters. And when it got into international waters, helicopters came in and fast roped onto the yacht and arrested this guy. They've done similar raids into failed state countries like Haiti and taken out kingpins. There was an amazing drug bust that took place in Haiti that I really should do a full video on someday, because it was incredibly well executed and audacious, going into a failed state and taking out a drug lord who was in his compound out there near Kajak Mel. So there is some precedent for this. And unfortunately, it appears that the pilot that they were trying to turn and get to turn in Maduro was extremely loyal to Maduro. And so instead of turning over Maduro, he just told Maduro what they were doing and then refused to play ball with the DEA. So it didn't work out. Now, with these previous drug raids into failed state countries, that means that it is possible that we might be planning something similar in Venezuela. And as a matter of fact, local or Spanish language news media are saying Nicolas Maduro's days are numbered. Take a listen to this guy. I translated this to English for you.
Precisely and exclusive here on Line of Fire. The former United States ambassador to Venezuela said today to Noticias Univision 24/7 that Nicolas Maduro does indeed have his days numbered. These were his words. 80% that it will happen what? That the United States will remove President Maduro, or that he will be overthrown internally?
Or 80% that we are going to do something with the objective that Maduro leaves the power. That is the objective we have.
Does this have any time window?
I think so. Just because what we have as tools, the destroyer ships, the planes, the men, and everything in the region has to be used or has to return to their bases. So I would say within 30 days.
30 days. 30 days. We are here in Washington preparing a special edition of Line of Fire for you. Maduro in the crosshairs.
So this is again, the former ambassador to Venezuela, who is going on talk shows and saying it looks like Maduro may have less than 30 days left, and so maybe he shouldn't be buying any green bananas at this point. He's not the only one that's saying it. As a matter of fact, some of American politicians are telling Maduro that he should, sort of get lost. This would be a good time for him to exit stage left. He is talking about not only Venezuela, their dictatorship that's about to fall, but if that happens, then he's saying that also Cuba's dictatorship may be about to fall, because Cuba relies very heavily on subsidized fuel from Venezuela. Now, Venezuela has used fuel as an instrument of soft power for many years. As a matter of fact, back during the Chavez administration and at the beginning of the Maduro administration, they were giving subsidized fuel to lots of countries in the region, to Honduras, to Haiti, and places like that. And they were doing that to try to exercise control over those countries. Venezuela has also been known to send agents provocateurs into various Latin American countries, including the one that I'm sitting in, to try to whip up anger against local governments and try to get left-wing governments, installed or elected into those. And they've been largely successful at that. If you look at a map of South America and Latin America in general, most of the countries in South and Central America are now left-wing governments. Colombia has become a left-wing government, Nicaragua for sure. The only ones that really are not are Panama and El Salvador and Argentina, who are really not left-wing. Mexico is left-wing. Guatemala is left-wing, not as much. Honduras, not as much as well. But so Venezuela has been a force to be reckoned with in the Caribbean and across the Western Hemisphere for some time. And they've even had agents provocateurs, I believe, in the United States trying to whip up anger and resentment against the government, maybe with some of these ICE protests and that sort of thing. That is part of their modus operandi. And we have now millions of Venezuelans in the United States. There's no question that some of those people are there with nefarious intent. That's one of the reasons why President Trump wants to overthrow Nicolas Maduro, because if we can install a legitimate regime in Venezuela, things will start getting better in Venezuela, and therefore the 8 million people who fled Venezuela because they were having to cook and eat their pets will be able to go back home. One thing that I've noticed about the Venezuelans that I've met, and there's a lot of them here in Panama. I've, of course, talked to a lot of Venezuelan migrants during the Biden administration as these caravans were coming up north to the United States. And in talking with them, one thing you will notice is that Venezuelans, by and large, are very patriotic for their country. And most of them that are adults remember when their country was one of the wealthiest countries on planet Earth. Now it's one of the poorest, and that's exactly because socialism. So they remember when their country was great, and as soon as Maduro is out of there, a lot of them say that they're going to go back home. And so it would really be a big support to President Trump's objective of moving a lot of these illegal migrants out of the United States for him to cause a regime change to take place in Venezuela so that a lot of the Venezuelans would decide to go back home. Now, Lindsey Graham also, again, this brings us to the question, when is something going to happen on the ground in Venezuela? Because as that ambassador to Venezuela said, we've got all these troops, we've got all these ships in the region. We can't leave them there forever. They cost money to stay there. So how long will it be before we actually attack Venezuela and maybe Cuba? Okay. So his theory was that it would take perhaps 30 days. And there's a reason for that. That's because let's turn the sound off on that one. This is the USS Gerald Ford, which is it left Croatia about a week ago and is now steaming full speed toward the Mediterranean. I'm sorry, toward the Caribbean. The Gerald Ford is the largest aircraft carrier in the world that is actually floating. And it has a tremendous amount of firepower, about 4,000 troops on there that can add to what's already in the Caribbean. I keep saying the Mediterranean. However, it's going to take a couple of weeks for them to get to the Mediterranean. They got to meet up with some of their other littoral ships and that sort of thing. They've got to resupply themselves at sea, do a resupply at sea, and that all takes time. So it's going to be probably at least a minimum of a couple weeks before the Gerald D. Ford shows up in the Caribbean, and they're probably not going to do anything until it does. So that's why they're saying, well, it could be up to 30 days, but it's coming. Now, Lindsey Graham gave an interview the other day where he was talking about, can President Trump order attacks on Venezuela without bringing Congress in and at least briefing them on what he's about to do? Theoretically, he's supposed to involve Congress and get Congress's approval before we go to war with anybody. But that really hasn't happened since like the Korean War or something, or maybe even before that. So technically, President Trump could order strikes on Venezuela, just like he's been ordering strikes on these boats, but it's going to be quite a bit more challenging in terms of the political capital he has to expend if he does it unilaterally. So it would be better if he briefs Congress. And from what Lindsey Graham says, he may be about to do that when he gets back from this current trip he's on to the Far East.
Trump told me yesterday that he plans to brief members of Congress when he gets back from Asia about future potential military operations against Venezuela and Colombia. So there will be a congressional briefing about a potential expanding from the sea to the land. I support that idea, but I think he has all the authority he needs. Senator Gallego on another network accused President Trump and our military of committing murder by attacking these drug boats. To our men and women in uniform, you're not murdering anybody. You're making America safer by going after narco-terrorists. You're following lawful orders. When President Bush 41 took Ortega out in Panama, Reagan went into Grenada to deal with the Cuban influence from Grenada in our backyard. He has all the authority in the world. This is not murder. This is protecting America from being poisoned by narco-terrorists coming from Venezuela and Colombia.
So he's pointing something out that I think is really gross. And that's when politicians accuse U.S. troops of murdering people when they're following lawful orders. Look, C.S. Lewis said it best. all killing is not murder, just like all sex is not adultery. And a lawful order from your superiors when you're in the military might include you having to take someone's life. That is what war is all about. And it's not pretty. It's not fun. I've been in that situation myself. And I can tell you that you have to be able, as a soldier, as a Marine, to be able to sort of make it okay in your head, to help make yourself understand that if I am called to do this, that if you look at the Romans, I think it's chapter 13, where it talks about 12 or 13, where it talks about you are God's agent of wrath against the evildoer. That what he's talking about is that the king does not wield the sword for no reason. That the agents of the king, that is the soldiers and the police, they are what Romans calls agents of wrath, to take out bad people, to do bad things in the name of the government. And it is the government's job to keep its people safe, even if it means the righteous application of violence. And there is such a thing. So people who say that violence never solves anything, that's not true. Sometimes violence is the most righteous thing to do in a certain situation. And if our troops are being ordered to bomb a vessel that's carrying drugs across the ocean, or bomb a cocaine lab in Venezuela, and people die in that, you as a soldier cannot be held responsible for murder, because it was not your call. You're just following orders. Now, if you're ordered to burn down a village and machine gun a bunch of little children, the U.S. military trains everybody in basic training what a lawful and what an unlawful order looks like. And that would be an unlawful order. And you are not only allowed, but you are required to disobey unlawful orders. And so if you're given an order that is not lawful and you carry it out, then you are responsible for what you did. And under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, you can be prosecuted for that. And that has happened. We've had that happen in the war in Afghanistan, in the war in Iraq. So there is a system, there is a process, there is a policy already in place to help soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen, and Marines decide whether or not an order is lawful and whether or not they should carry that out. The orders to bomb cocaine boats are certainly lawful. And for Democratic politicians to be calling our own troops murderers is pretty gross. It's pretty sick. And they should be ashamed of themselves for doing that. So Harun Musa says, I have a love-hate relationship with Chuck Holton. I sub and unsub every day. We could have a beer together, except I don't drink beer. I don't agree with everything. I'm Orthodox and Russian. Okay, well, that's nice. Glad you're Orthodox and Russian. And thank you for continuing to watch. You're certainly, I don't expect you to agree with everything I say. I'm telling you what I know based on my experience and the time that I've spent on the ground in the places that I go. And the reason that I would say people should listen to me is because I've got more than 20 years of experience following wars and disasters around the globe. I've got 8 years of experience in the U.S. military before that, 10 years of experience as a researcher and a stockbroker. And so all of that, I think, gives me a certain skill set that I can bring to bear to sort of comment on the different things that are happening around the world. And again, you don't have to agree, but I appreciate you being somewhat respectful in the chat. Otherwise, our moderators are going to smite you. And that's because it's our job to keep this chat welcoming and not rancorous. Okay. So, I mean, if you've got something you disagree about, put it in the chat and I'll answer it. Okay. So, all right. Now, Nicolas Maduro gave a interview on local Venezuelan TV the other day in which he blamed President Trump for imperial ambitions. He, repeated this sort of ridiculous claim that the United States is just after Venezuela for their oil. And I explained before why that's kind of ridiculous, because number one, America is energy independent without Venezuelan oil, so we don't need Venezuelan oil. Number two, Venezuelan oil is extremely dirty and heavy and takes a tremendous amount of processing. And we do, in the United States, have some refineries that are calibrated specifically for Venezuelan oil. And we do need a certain amount of Venezuelan oil to keep those refineries in operation. But we already have agreements with Venezuela to get the oil we need to do that. So this might be crazy, but the United States is actually bringing in oil from Venezuela right now as we speak and refining it in the United States. Now, it cannot be sold in the United States. That's where we draw the line, because we don't want to support Venezuela any more than we have to, but we are sort of reliant on a modicum of oil from Venezuela because we have these refineries that are calibrated to specifically that kind of oil. I don't understand how that works, honestly. It seems to me like how hard would it be to recalibrate it to take lighter, sweeter crude and get oil from Guyana instead for those, but and maybe we'll do that. But for the time being, we are still buying oil from Venezuela through American oil companies like Chevron and ExxonMobil. So we're already getting it. So we don't need to take over Venezuela to get their oil. The other thing is Venezuela has tremendous reserves of oil, but they are very, very, very bad at getting it out of the ground. So the United States, for example, for every 80 million barrels or almost 90 million barrels that the United States takes out, Venezuela is only able to take out 1 million barrels of oil in that same time frame. And so I think that's in a month. I'm not positive. So Venezuela used to be able to produce a lot more oil, but when they went to a socialist economy, their ability to extract oil from the ground went through the floor, because people that live in communist countries do not have any motivation to work hard, to show up early and work late and do a good job, because they get paid the same no matter what. And so there's a built-in motivation in communist countries for people to do the bare minimum not to get fired, right? And that's it. So when you listen to President Maduro talk about this, keep that in mind.
The American empire is playing a dangerous card for our region, but also dangerous for them. And moreover, it is an extremist card. They cannot say that Maduro has weapons of mass destruction, or they can say about me what they said about Saddam Hussein. They can't. No one would believe them. So they bring out the stories, which they have brought out, Hollywood style, where Maduro is the villain of the movie and they are the good guys. And then they are going to send their army, the good guys of the movie, blonde, strong, coming to get the Latino, the villain. But the truth of the movie, two peoples know it, that the bad guy is not who they say, that the bad guy is the one who writes the movie, the one who makes the movie over there. Those are the real bad guys, as we have demonstrated multiple times. Venezuela is a free country, completely free from the phenomenon of drug trafficking.
Come on, completely free from the phenomenon of drug trafficking. You mean to tell me there's no drug trafficking at all in Venezuela? Okay, that does not pass the smell test at all. Give me a break on that. Okay, let's keep listening.
Here, there was not a single hectare, not a hectare planted with coca leaf plantations. There are no cocaine labs, and the ones they bring across the border, bam, boom, pow, we destroy them ourselves, our police forces, our military forces. There is not a single hectare of marijuana. Because moreover, marijuana is now produced legally in U.S. territory. It is enriched marijuana.
And even certain American presidents consume it too. No, and all the drug consumption in the United States.
Confess by themselves?
So what he's saying here is he's trying to put this back on the United States. This is very common. The Mexican presidents, this particular one, Sheinbaum, and also the previous Mexican president, AMLO, and multiple previous Mexican presidents have all done the same thing. All the problems that America accuses us of actually are America's fault. And so Maduro here is saying, the United States wants to take over our oil. That's ridiculous. We don't. Saying there's not one bit of drug trafficking in Venezuela. That's ridiculous as well. And I guess we'll find out. Now, the funny thing is, Maduro says there is no drugs in Venezuela. There's no drug trafficking, no drugs being grown, no drugs being processed in Venezuela. Just last week, Venezuelan military authorities raided a drug lab in western Venezuela, right near the Colombian border, and took it out. And it was all over the local news. Oh, look at us. We're taking out drug. And, so I guess you could say, well, did they plant that there and stage a raid on it so that they could say, look, we're taking out our own drugs? Or was he wrong when he said that there were no drugs in Venezuela? Okay. Either way, it's obvious you can't trust Maduro. The other thing he said in there, which kind of made me snort, was that Venezuela is a free country. Anybody who lives in Venezuela knows that Venezuela is not a free country. And there's a documentary that was done on it. Let's see if I can find that documentary real quick. I've got it right here. So I want to show you just a little bit about this to show you kind of what it looks like living in Venezuela.
Senator.
Oh, not that one. Sorry.
Wrong
one. There it is. So triple digit inflation, humanitarian crisis. Look, I was in Venezuela and on the border of Venezuela when the inflation was just out of control. And it's interesting. I want to show you just a little bit more of this video, and I'll be right back. Let's see if we can. So again, showing that Venezuela is all but a failed state. And it got so bad there that, when I was in Colombia, right on the border one time, I said, I want to get some of that Venezuelan currency that I've heard so much about that is, being inflated out of existence. And so I sent my driver down to the local kind of town square in Cucuta, Colombia, and said, see if you can find anybody that will sell you some Venezuelan currency. Here's $10, take it down there, whatever. He came back with a huge bag, like trash bag, full of Venezuelan currency. And here's some of it right here. I've got bags and bags full of this stuff. As a matter of fact, I think what I'm going to do is we're going to do a raffle for some Venezuelan currency and use the money to help our Venezuelan single moms that are in Colombia that we've been helping and ministering to down there, with more than 120 women now that we're taking care of and ministering to in Cartagena, Colombia, and they're Venezuelan single moms. So look at all this currency and beautiful currency, all this. And this is not even worth toilet paper because it's real plasticky and it's not absorbent. But you know what the Venezuelans, being very industrious people, started doing with it is they started making their own currency into products that were worth something. So this is a purse that I got, or satchel of some kind, and it's actually made origami style from Venezuelan currency. I have, a bunch of different origami projects, birds and things like that. And this thing is completely full of Venezuelan currency. right here. So anyway, all that to say, it's kind of hard to make the case that Venezuela is a great place to live. But if they get rid of Nicolas Maduro, it could be great again. And so President Trump is actually very popular with the Venezuelans I've spoken to. I talked to one yesterday here in Panama and said, what are people that you talk to in Venezuela saying? And they're saying, we are all hoping against hope that President Trump will take out Maduro. And they've been hoping that for a long time. I remember having them ask me that in Colombia when they would come across the border to go shopping. And they would say, when is President Trump, this is during the first Trump administration, when is President Trump going to send the U.S. military to take out Maduro? And I really took issue with that. I was like, why should I send my sons to bleed and die for Venezuela when you aren't willing to bleed and die for your own country? But now that there are 8 million Venezuelans that have fled that country, and many of them have come to the United States, it might actually be worth it for the United States to go in and take out Maduro. So we'll have to wait and see. Now, on Monday, I'm going to go to Trinidad and start reporting from there because U.S. naval ships, the USS Gravely, just put into port in Trinidad. We're doing military exercises in Trinidad. And Trinidad is only about 5 miles at its closest point from the Venezuelan coast. So from there, we should be able to talk with some of the fishermen. We should be able to maybe even go out in one of those boats. I'm going to be careful that we don't have any white bundles with us when we do that. And right now, the fishermen in Trinidad are protesting against President Trump because they're afraid to go out and go fishing now, which I don't think they should be, because if you're in a fishing boat, obviously we can tell the difference. Just make sure your fishing boat doesn't have 5 outboard motors and a bunch of barrels of, meth or something on board. But look at this protest that's happening with the fishermen from Trinidad and Tobago.
Patria no se vende, la patria se defiende, la patria no se vende, la patria se defiende.
I want you to look at these boats. I want you to look at these boats because you can see that these are not the kind of boats that are being blown up. They all only have 1 motor. That one has 2. Okay, so maybe 2 motors. Most of them only have 1 motor. And none of the boats that have been blown up by the Trump administration have been 1 motor boats. They were all boats that had, 3, 4, 5 motors on them. And that's just far too expensive for a fisherman. So we'll take a look at that. And, when I get to Trinidad, I'm going to go talk to those people and get some more information for you on that. Okay, so we got some questions here. I want to bring up the questions now. KP1 says, are you aware some stores in Florida are posting that they will allow open carry on the 1st? Oh, well, that's good to hear. I thought that stores in Florida already allowed open carry. Maybe most of them do, but some of them did not, and they've changed their minds. That's smart. A lot of people should show up open carrying or concealed carrying for sure at stores if you're going to go out shopping on the 1st. But better idea would be to not be there on the 1st. Get your shopping done now. Cheryl Miller says, how many regions in our world are on the brink of war right now? Oh, there's always a dozen or so. Cheryl Miller says, do you know what the official deadline is for the Medicare open enrollment? I think it's the end of the year. I think it's the December 31st. Lord Peanut says, Brazil's rich in resources. Things grow there easily. People seem good enough to begin with. How on earth did they get to such a horrid situation? Is it socialism or just corruption? Mostly just corruption and violent crime. The president of Brazil right now, Lula, is extremely corrupt. As a matter of fact, he spent several years in prison. He was the president once before, and then he went to prison after he got out, and then he got out of prison and became president again, and now has put Bolsonaro, the previous president of Brazil, in prison as well. One thing I know is that there are few countries on planet Earth where violent and petty crime are as high as it is in Brazil. And again, corruption and poor, law enforcement and that sort of thing has been an issue for a long time. Diane Britson says, can you please provide that suggestions on cell phone again? I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Diane. I'm sorry. You have to be much more clear in your questions because I have no idea what you're talking about. The Tide Deck says, who takes over after Maduro is kicked aside? There is a legally elected president of Venezuela. He won the last presidential election, and he and Maria Corina Machado are the elected leadership that is now in exile. Now, Machado is in Venezuela, but she's under essentially like house arrest. She gets hassled. Her people get arrested all the time. But the elected president, Guillermo, I always space on that guy's name. Anyway, he's I think in the United States right now. So if Maduro gets kicked aside, then the legal president of Venezuela can go in and take over, and things will get a whole lot better. Marcos America says, is there hope for Brazil, or will it become another front in the war against neo-communism? Well, the only hope for Brazil is to get rid of the leftists that are running it right now. And President Trump has been pretty unfriendly to the current president, Lula of Brazil as well. Tizra Pinto says, reports from Rio cops state that the accomplices of the narco-terrorists in Rio stripped their dead buddies of guns and clothing to throw off forensics. Yeah, I can't show you the pictures of the huge piles of dead bodies. That been more than 150 people killed in this, and there are pictures out on the AP of bodies lined up down the street just as far as you can see, and many of them are without some or all of their clothing, and so yeah, I have heard about that. Carrie P says, where's the proof those boats were carrying drugs? If you look at the video, Carrie, I'll show you this one. This is the most recent one again. It looks like it got deleted. So let me go find it again real quick. I think it's one of these. All right, hang on. Give me a second. I'll find it. Oh, there it is. So if you look at these boats that are being blown up, number one, that's got 3 outboard motors on it. And that right there tells you it's a go-fast drug boat because it can't be a fishing boat. This one, we can't tell, but it was definitely far too large to be a fishing boat. Again, there's one that's got 3 or 4 motors on it. They got blown up. All right. And now that one, if we take it slow here, what is that on the front of that boat? Well, I can tell you what that is. That's something that we call square groupers. Square groupers are drug bales, bales of cocaine or marijuana that are being carried up to, to north, let's say, and they're not taking them directly to the United States. That'd be way too far, but they are taking them on the way to the United States. And as President Trump has said, we've now almost completely stopped the drug boats that are coming in. Apparently there were a whole lot of them to begin with, but now we're taking them out. And he's saying that we're about to do the same thing for drugs that are coming by land. So that's how you know that those are carrying drugs. You can see them on the deck of that boat. Okay. Now, okay, so let's remove that one. Lord Peanut says, I'm not American. Can someone explain to me why Latinos who are European Spanish people are pretending to be black with the same history of the enslaved people? Okay. They have a people group here they call mestizos, and they're not European. They're not black. They're kind of in between. They're a mix of, mestizo means mixed, of European and what I would say is West Indian. Okay, so people from like Haiti and places like that were originally brought over as slaves, and they've stayed here. So they either workers on the Panama Canal, for example. Many of those were brought from the West Indies. The way that those people got to the West Indies, their ancestors were brought over as slaves to work the sugar cane plantations and things like that. So they're not pretending to be black. Many of them actually are black. There are a lot of people here in Panama who you would look at and you'd say that's a black person without a doubt. And there are a lot of people you'd look at, we call them Ravi Blancos, that you'd look at and you'd think that was a white, European guy. And there's a lot of people that are in between. Those are the people that are called mestizos. Okay. Cheryl Miller says, will this monster hurricane affect the timing of Trump's plans and the timing of my trip to Trinidad? Probably not. It's going north of Trinidad. I thought about maybe going to Jamaica first for a day or two to bring you some news about the devastation in Jamaica. But it looks like I might not even be able to get into Jamaica because I saw a video of the airport in Montego Bay that was absolutely destroyed. So the airports may not be open. Adam Forbes says, what's the latest happening in Gaza since the ceasefire breach? Israel has been bombing sites in Gaza because of that ceasefire breach. There was IDF troop who was killed in the ceasefire violation by Hamas, and so they're taking it to Hamas. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's live, most likely. Rex's Human says, I was amazed as to where they hide drugs in trucks and other vehicles. This may be done in planes, commercial or other. Do they inspect those planes? They do inspect the planes, but there are a lot of drugs that are brought in through actually commercial air into the United States. Matter of fact, I have a friend who, back when she was much younger, was really stupid and accepted a bag from somebody who said, hey, can you do me a favor and take this bag with you back to the United States? And when she got to the airport in Panama, they opened that bag and it was full of cocaine. And she spent 4.5 years in prison here in Panama for that. So yeah, it does happen. Lord Peanut says, so the president of Venezuela and AOC are that. Or what? I don't know what you're talking about there. Sorry, Lord Peanut. Can't answer that one. Thank you, Cheryl. Very kind of you. Look, folks, you can also you can become a supporter over at chuckholton.com. You can also become a supporter here on YouTube if you like, and it's cheaper. You don't get as many benefits being a supporter on YouTube. It's better to be a supporter on locals, but we'll take them either way. So if you want to become a supporter, I think it's only $5 a month here on YouTube, and there are some benefits to it. We do put up videos and let you have early access to them before everybody else and things like that. So I would encourage you to do that. And please do me a favor, hit that like button, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. And that's all I've got for today. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all of you. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Stay tuned. We'll be on again very soon. So